Hey guys, Ben Paynes here, and today we're back once again for another video, and this time we're taking on the second round of the Club73 Weekend Series, and this time we are at Rye House, which is a track last year where we had quite a bit of success making our way up into 4th position, just a couple of places off of a podium, and honestly a really solid position, so hoping to try and replicate that today. However, on this year, this time we are going to be starting a little bit further back. We're starting in 10th position in the A final. Obviously we're going to have a 5-minute practice followed by a 30-minute straight race, so we're going to see how we get on today and hope for as good a result as we can possibly get. Now, before we head into the footage, if you do enjoy this video, can you please leave a like on the video down below, as I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. We're only 2 subscribers away from the big 500 at the time of recording this video, so I'd really appreciate it if you guys could subscribe down below. But without further ado, we're going to jump straight into the footage and see how we get on today. Okay then guys, so jumping into our practice session, I am going to have a little bit of a caveat in this one about one of the side quests that we were able to complete on this day, rather than talk about the footage that you are seeing in the background. So enjoy the practice footage of me trundling around Rye House in this one for 5 minutes, but in the meantime what we were able to do is jump onto the Club73 endurance round, which was taking place after this event had been completed. Now, I didn't film this as I came in during the middle stint, and honestly it would have just been hot laps, so I wasn't really racing anyone and it would been pretty boring footage to try and commentate over or make a video about. But despite this, we were actually drafted into the Levitating Barrier team by Callum and Sam Oatley, so a massive thank you to them for allowing me the opportunity to jump on, have a little bit of extra chat time after the race had obviously been completed that you are watching, and it was just a great time. I had a lot of fun. We were able to actually qualify in 2nd place by Callum, or through Callum should I say, as we decided to distribute the weight, unevenly. So rather than everyone being 85 kilograms, which is sort of suggested to be the case, we instead had Callum unweighted at 63 kilograms, which gave him a bit more pace in the qualifying session. I was then had to put a little bit of extra weight on alongside Sam Oatley, so I was actually weighed up with a 13 kilogram seat, which put us at 94 kilos, and Sam also was weighed up as well, which put him at 98 kilos. So we were able to have a really strong first stint, with Callum obviously driving around, it just tucked into 2nd place. We actually qualified in 3rd position, so able to get the jump on the start, moving up into 2nd position pretty early, and was then able to break away with the leader to sort of keep a nice 20-second gap to any of the other drivers around. Now, after about an hour or so into the race, I then hopped into the kart for the next sort of 45 minutes. It was a 3-hour race, so I then jumped into the kart for the next 45 minutes to 50 minutes, and by the time that my stint finished, we were actually able to hold our position. We were still in 2nd place overall, which I was really happy about. I then swapped over to Sam Oatley, who then hopped in at the end, and unfortunately just didn't quite have the pace at the end of the race, and this led to us dropping down into 5th position. But despite this, we were in fact included in the clubman category. So there was 2 categories. There was sort of the pro category for sort of teams that had done more endurance racing in the past and obviously a bit more experienced drivers. And then there was also the rookie category, which is where we were sort of placed into, or the clubman category I should say, and we did in fact manage to finish on the podium in that one in 3rd position. So really happy with that. A little bit of a bonus side quest, as I mentioned, on this day, and honestly once again I just can't thank you guys enough for letting me hop in and get involved, as it was a lot of fun, and it was just great to have that extra bit of track time after the racing had concluded in the afternoon. But despite this, we are going to jump into the rest of the footage here in the practice session, and as you can see, our fastest lap so far is the lap that we have performed as we just come across the line with a 43.374, and I think that this was around the same sort of pace as we were able to achieve last year, so I was hoping if we could get our head down a little bit more towards the end of the sort of practice session, that we'd be able to put in some pretty solid times that would put us on pace with some of the other guys that we're out on track, obviously in this A final, as that's where we are racing today against some of the, obviously all the drivers that finished in the top 3 essentially at the last round in every single heat was then sort of placed into this race. This is an extremely tough race against some really tough opposition, and we're just going to see where we end up after the practice has ended and the racing does begin. But in the meantime, you can see once again we are getting quicker with every lap that we are sort of going around, coming across the line of 43.360. so every lap, obviously it's a nice sunny day today, wasn't any risk of bad weather, and it was just a case of finding more confidence here and there and just trying to get on the power, take some better lines. One thing I noticed pretty early, which I sort of forgotten about compared to last year, is that if the rear end of the kart sort of slides away going into some of the corners, then the kart just completely bogs down, and it was really difficult to actually get it back up to speed again, especially as this is a very high speed track. There's a lot of areas of the track where you don't really use the brake at all and you just tend to lift, or you just take it flat out. But in the meantime, you can see then top left hand side of the screen we do come across the line once again with an even faster lap, our fastest lap of the practice session of 43.146, and this was in fact our fastest lap of the practice session. We weren't really able to go much quicker than this, but that's just the way it goes sometimes, but it was still a pretty respectable time. I think this put us 7th out of the 26 drivers that were going around on track in practice, so really happy with the pace. Obviously we're starting in 10th position, so it's going to be a bit of an ask to try and barge our way through at the beginning to the front of the pack, so we're just going to try and see how it goes once we get into that. But coming across the line once again, as mentioned, just trying to beat in behind the other drivers, and we come across the line with a 43.365, which is a little bit slower. But in the meantime, we're going to jump into the footage now and see how we do in the race. Here we are then, guys, jumping straight into the race, starting in 10th position, as I mentioned earlier in practice. Unfortunately dropping straight down to 11th as we come up to the first corner, just due to being stuck on the outside, and this then turned into 12th and 13th as we went round the first corner. I wasn't really happy with this, so you could see all sorts of carnage is kicking off immediately. People are spinning out, people are going all over the place, and this has actually opened us up a little gap to sort of allow us to push our way up into 8th position, which I was really happy with here. But you can see with quite a poor run coming out of the corner, we then lose the position back down into 9th to Martin Russell, who's able to go around the outside of us coming into the second section of the track. We've got Jack Goldsmith there up our inside once again, and this is just where we started to leak positions all over the place, getting bundled out wide there by Tom Langford as well. So we are now back down into 11th, and then there was a yellow flag which had to come out. Now I began to slow down here, but everyone else seemed to not slow down as much as me, so I did lose a little bit of time here, which I was a little bit gutted about, as I just thought yellow flags meant to slow down quite a fair bit, but everyone seemed to not do this, so we did actually compromise ourselves quite a lot there, and you can see that we now have a bit of a gap to the leading group that is beginning to drive off into the distance at this point. So we are in 11th place still, and was just determined to get our head back down. Didn't really want to go into this one losing positions, as it's just going to be a long race, and the further down you end up in the pack and the further out of the toe you sort of are compared to other people, as being in a group really does aid the top end speed coming down this back straight, or the start finish straight, as if you're in behind people, the lack of wind resistance coming up against you just really does help out. And you can see once again trying to capitalise on all of the action that's sort of kicking off in front of us, managing to gain 2 positions there before shortly losing it once again to Luke Power around the outside, but luckily we're able to hold off on the inside line, and this time I decided to cut across more to the left hand side of the track to stop him from cutting back past us around the outside. Now we skip forward a little bit here, as we were just in the train behind Josh Ball here, and I was just hoping to work with him a little bit just to try and push him across the line, or start finish line. As I mentioned, just being in that sort of area of a little bit of a train just does give you that bit of extra momentum. However, unfortunately going into the second corner here, we just drift a little bit too wide, and that allows Luke Power to slide it inside with a very good move. Was sort of under threat here from losing a few more positions, which didn't really want to leak too quickly, as obviously, as I mentioned, you just want to try and stay on the back of people, because if you sort of make a mistake here, it's very difficult to catch back up when other people are all working together. Now obviously, unlike last year, I wanted to try and not going to the curb of death, because if you do that, your kart gets chewed and spat out all over the other side of the track. So I wanted to try and avoid this if I could, and instead I was trying to take a little bit of a safer approach. We go a little bit wide here coming into the corner, and that just causes us to lead to the escape road. Now at the time, I wasn't quite aware that I'd caused a bit of an issue here. As you can see, Harrison Kirkham comes past, and he was pretty upset. Now, I was a bit confused about this, as I hadn't really had any interactions with him yet in the race, but we are going to see what happened here a little bit later as we round out the end of this lap. You can see once again everyone is sort of bunched up together, and I was hoping to sort of follow Harrison through and push past Luke, but unfortunately you can see there is a yellow flag up ahead, so we had to back off. Now, courtesy of Mr. Cosman, we're going to take another look at that from behind, and you can see the tyre barrier actually got flicked up and wrapped around Harrison's head. So very lucky to not have him actually seriously injured and pulled out of the car, in all honesty. So apologies, Harrison, it honestly was not intentional, but it just goes to show how dangerous it is when you just don't really take the correct route around the track. Obviously it's completely my fault, I hold my hands up, that was a bit of a silly decision from me to try and take to that part of the track, and luckily nothing bad really came from it. But you can see just the sort of up ahead, Harrison's still pretty livid with what happened, and now he's trying to push his way through. He goes ahead of Tom Langford up ahead, so he's made quite a few positions in a couple of laps, and he was now determined to make another move on Josh Bull into the last corner, which luckily for us as well, we were able to make our way past the driver in front of us as we come across the line just before we got to the yellow flag. So able to make our way back up to 11th. And honestly, we were just chopping and changing positions all over the place. It's really difficult to actually just plough forward, plough ahead, and really make any sort of headway in this race. We're sort of getting stuck in some battles, and you can see the leading group up ahead is just racing further and further away. So we're stuck down in 11th place at the moment on the back of some pretty solid drivers here, and I was just hoping that without battling with them too hard, we'd be able to sort of push each other along and just sort of catch up and keep up with Harrison, and just sort of catch up and use him as a bit of an anchor to pull us towards the other guys that are further up the track. Now we come across the start-finish line once again. You can see we have got a little bit of clear air behind us, but we come across the line with a 44.126 second lap, which is obviously sort of due to all the yellow flags that were sort of being shown going into the first section of the track. Again, you can see Luke is looking for a bit of a move, Tom's also looking for a bit of a move on Josh Bull, but I was just happy and content to just sitting behind at this point and wait for any openings to sort of present themselves, and unfortunately just lost out there a little bit as we're just a little bit too far back. I knew that Josh was going to have the inside for this corner, but then Luke is able to have the inside for the next corner, which just opens the gap up for us to just slot down the inside and take a free position up into 10th place, covering it off as we go into the last two corners of the lap. So again, we are now sat in behind Tom and Luke, and we are in the position where we started despite all the chaos that has been going off. So we do skip forward ahead once again into a later part of the race where honestly just not really a lot was happening, and at this point in the race we did have Ben Johnson trying to make moves up our inside. He was behind us, and I was actually just sort of trying to signal to him just to say, look, let's work together, let's stop battling with one another, especially into that first corner, just due to the fact that we were now beginning to catch up with the leading pack. You could see they are up ahead, and again he just sort of refused to cooperate, trying to go down the inside once again on the first corner, and again going into the third lap in a row he tried to do it again with an even tighter gap, which was beginning to get on my nerves, if I'm brutally honest. I was just beginning to get a little bit tilted in the car at this point, as I just had no idea why he kept deciding to go down the inside. You can see how much time it's actually caused us to lose going a few laps later. This is just in the space of 2 or 3 laps, and unfortunately there going into the first corner on the 4th attempt I did just leave the door open a little bit too wide, and this allowed him to get through. Now instead of sort of getting a bit too annoyed by this, I decided to slot in behind him and try and almost push him along to catch up with the other guys that have now managed to catch up with the leading group, because obviously at this point in the race we have now dropped a position from where we started, which is never my objective in races, never really want to be going backwards, but I was just finding it really difficult to actually make and confirm places in this race, it was quite difficult to actually break away from anyone, especially when they were right in behind you. They were able to hold on to the back of you, and as long as no mistakes were made, they were just going to stay right up with you. Now, going through the sort of first couple of corners here, you can see we're closing up to Ben, who is up ahead of us, and I didn't really want to be hanging around at this point, so decided to send a move up the inside here, nice and clean up the inside into the hairpin, and this allowed us to regain 10th position, where we do skip forward once again as we were just sort of trundling around. You can see with the battling that's going on up ahead, we would now caught up with the next sort of pack, and you can see a driver in car number 5 is going quite defensive. I tried to switch the outside to almost go for a switchback, but unfortunately it just sort of left the door open a little bit too wide, and this allowed Ben to go down the inside once again. I tried to take a bit of a tighter line to get a sort of cleaner exit, but clearly my brain was not working, because you don't get a cleaner exit by going tighter. So unfortunately we had to reside in 11th place here, and I knew from experience that Ben was probably going to go for a move down the inside of the driver in car number 5 into the first corner. So I tried to give him a little bit of a nudge coming out of the last corner to give him that bit of a momentum boost, but unfortunately he just wasn't quite close enough. The driver in front covers it off quite well, and instead we are just closing around, trying to take a bit of a wide line to sort of get a better exit rather than sort of take all our speed on entry. And you can see it does help us to catch up through a couple of hairpins here, and again we're just trying to take a clean line out of the hairpin section, or the stadium section I should say, before we get up to the pylon corner down the bottom half of the track here. So we're just in a little bit of a train here, trying to work with Ben to try and get past the driver in car number 5, and then maybe look for a move on Will Sotchen and Samuel Essery up ahead there, who are currently in 7th and 8th position. So obviously at this point I've still lost a position, and as I mentioned earlier in the race, or a lap ago, I knew Ben was going to go for a move down the inside. I tried to follow him through. We have Sam May behind us, who's sort of done the exact same move on us down the inside, so I was a bit miffed about that one, as now we were down at another position once again, down into 12th. But I thought if I was able to keep a cool head, sitting behind Sam May, I know he is a quick driver, finishing 2nd overall in the championship last season, that if we sat in behind him, he was going to sort of carve us a way through. So you can see, giving him a little bit of a nudge there to try and let him know that I'm not going to let the position go easily, and instead I was just hoping to sit in behind him, as I mentioned, and sort of just follow him through, just take any free positions that we could. You can see he gets a better exit coming out of the last corner here, sitting on the inside line, so I decided to just follow him up the inside here and get past the driver in car number 5, moving us back up into 11th place. Didn't really want to go for any silly moves here, any like really aggressive moves, as I thought if I was going to do this, it's just going to compromise us all the time, and if we had any chance of catching up with the lead group that was about 5-ish seconds up the road at this point, I knew that we were going to have to all work together. We can see Sam gets a better exit out of the stadium section compared to me, and again coming into pylon I was just hoping to close up as much as I could, but unfortunately for the whole day I just wasn't quite getting the exit out of the pylon corner, and it was just sort of compromising us going into the last corner as well. We weren't able to get as good a run as we wanted to. Giving Sam a little bit of a nudge here, wasn't really going to go for any silly moves. We had managed to open up a bit of a gap once again, coming across the line with a 43.203 second lap, and I knew that Sam was going to be lining up a move pretty soon, so I realised that the closer I was able to stick with him, then the more chance there was going to be of me following through and taking a free position once again. Unfortunately, we were just driving a little bit scruffy at this point in the race, and you can see it's just causing us to lose time coming out of the corners on the exit, which is bogging down a little bit too much, as I mentioned in practice, and it's just pretty weak driving from me. Obviously, most other drivers at this point in the race were doing high 42, low 43 second lap times, and we're just sort of only sitting mid to low 43 second lap times at this point. And you can see I'm getting a bit desperate here, using the placebo of human DRS to try and catch up, and I could see that Sam went for a move down the inside, tried to follow him through here past Will Sotchen, but unfortunately just didn't quite have the run, and I knew at this point we weren't going to be able to make it around the outside, so I decided to slot back in behind him, as from experience last year, trying to go for any sort of ridiculous sideways or side-by-side moves into the second hairpin in that section of the track was just going to cause us to leak positions to people behind. So you can see me checking over my shoulder. Didn't want that to happen once again this year, so decided to sort of be a bit more tactical, sort of live to fight another day. And that's exactly what we did as we come down the start-finish straight. We get a good launch off the last corner. We'll send to work together here, but I knew that if I wanted any chance of catching up with any of the other drivers that were further up the road, I'd have to sort of tag onto the back of Sam May. So a little bit of contact going into the first corner, but it's side-by-side contact, so just sort of forcing him a little bit wide, much like most other people have done to me earlier in the race. And luckily this is able to allow us another position back up into the position where we started in 10th once again, and now we are on the back of Sam May once again. We're obviously, you can see the drivers in first, second and third are right up ahead. They're almost going around the last corner now, so we've got a lot of work to do if any of us want any chance of getting up to the top group almost. And you can see here two drivers, Ben and Matt Hill, just going a little bit wayward into the last corner, and that just opens us up a gap to move up 2-3 positions coming down the start finish straight. And again, Sam goes for that sort of illustrious move down the inside of the first corner. We just follow him through up into 7th place, so we actually managed to gain 3 positions in a matter of 2 corners there, which I was really happy with. And now I knew that Sam was going to start to push forward, push ahead, and I wanted to use him as an anchor just to sort of pull me along and try and catch up with some of the other guys. That you could see the top group there on the right hand side, first, second and third. You got 4th and 5th up ahead there as well, so me and Sam are currently in 6th and 7th, so wanted to try and tag onto the back of him as well as I could here, just try and take some clean lines, be consistent, try and minimise the track distance as much as we can, but I just didn't want to really cause too much of any incidents. So we drove quite cleanly here behind Sam, and we do skip to the latter stages of the races here, and you can see here that Sam's managed to pull ahead of us by quite a bit. We made a few mistakes into the latter stages of the race, which has just made us be sort of consistently in the low 43 second laps as I mentioned, but luckily due to all the scrapping that is going on up ahead, we've been able to catch up to the top group here. So from 1st to 7th now, including myself, we are all in this group. Tom Langford gets pushed a little bit wide by Kieran Eves, so we're able to move our way up into 6th place, which I was really happy about. Obviously starting in 10th, never would have realised at this point that we'd be this close to sort of the top pack at this point in the race. Harrison goes for a nice switchback on Jack Goldsmith there. Got Luke Power trying to make his way back through as well in 3rd. Obviously Kieran's looking racy as well, and Sam too. Luke gets pushed out a little bit wide, so does Harrison. This allows Kieran up the inside line, which you know is synonymous for being a great line going into the first corner. Again, you can see Sam May going up the inside, following him through. I decided to try and follow him through here out the inside of Harrison Kirkham and Luke Power, but unfortunately we just didn't quite have the run there. Harrison goes off track, sort of appears again. We're sort of stuck to the outside, and then we have Tom Langford going up the inside. So unfortunately we leaked not just 1 but 2 positions back down into 8th with Samuel Essery around the outside, but unfortunately for him, he just didn't quite have the drive around the outside line to make it stick. So we are now on the last lap, as a matter of fact, so you can see how close the racing has become. Harrison's gone for a big lunge in the pylon up the inside of Tom Langford. I tried to follow him through around the outside, which then turns into the inside for the final corner, but unfortunately we just were unable to get the drive out of the corner to make any more positions. So we do in fact finish this one in 7th place, which in all honesty, with the amount of sort of action and activity that was going on in this race, I was really happy with against a tough group of drivers. This one was a lot of fun, a lot went on, and it was just a great race to be involved in. But in the meantime, guys, we're going to jump into some post-race thoughts and see what we thought of it. Okay then guys, so we've just finished off our race for the day. A little bit of carnage going on in that race. Obviously starting on the outside was always going to be a bit of an issue. Did end up getting bundled down the pack a little bit and was just trying to fight our way back through the field ever since. I believe that we ended that race in P7, which I'm really happy with, considering that we started in 10th and did get dropped down the field. But obviously from managing to fight our way back through, we just ended up in a pretty solid position, just a couple of seconds or right up behind the leading pack by the end of the race. Obviously we just ended up flying through the barrier at one point, having a bit of a scrap with one of the other drivers, and honestly was just a bit of a hairy moment there, just going straight through the barrier. I believe that the barrier actually flew in the air and ended up hitting Harrison Kirkham in the face, so apologies to you for that. Obviously didn't mean to completely slam through the barrier, but there was just nowhere else really to go at that point. So despite this, obviously quite happy with how the race went. We did have some solid pace throughout, sort of matching everyone else. I believe our fastest lap was around the same as everyone else, so we had some solid pace throughout the day. I think we were just quite inconsistent towards the beginning and mid part of the race, just losing momentum here and there by sliding a little bit too much through the corners and not getting on the power early enough, or hitting the brakes a little bit too hard. But at the end of the day, a solid result, which I'm really happy with considering this calibre that was in the race. Did just have to cut that off due to a train almost killing me. But obviously that does in fact bring us to the end of the video. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, can you please leave a like on the video, as I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel, as it really does help me out. We do have our next video will be the second round of the SRK Championship down at Brighton. So I hope you guys feel free to tune in for that one, as it's going to be a great event, much like every other outdoor event always is, and I'm really looking forward to it. But in the meantime guys, I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care.